You're listening to the Point. Ready or not, let's keep it real at Turning Point.
The unexpected happens. Life comes with real challenges. The reason we're here is to have hard conversations, to grow, and to realize we're not alone. So ready or not, let's start understanding more about the darkness of isolation that many women can experience when facing an unplanned pregnancy. So welcome to The Point. I'm your host, Debbie Taylor. I'm the director of Turning Point, along with my co-host, Sherry Love, who is our nurse manager. With us today is Mary, who was a teen mom, and her husband are still together, and they overcame those odds that are stacked against them. Teen parenting is one of the toughest undertakings a person can ever face. But it is possible. And I think today we have a lot more resources than back when she was expecting. And so I just think that Mary and her husband have overcome some tremendous odds. So Mary, thanks so much for being here. So how old were you when you and your husband found out you were expecting?
I had just turned 21 when I found out that we were expecting. I was in college. He was in college. He's about a year older than me, so he was 22. I was in college here, but he was in college away. So we didn't live, he was about 7 hours away.
And so what was that like? Do you remember what it was like finding out you were?
It was very scary. I went to a center here in Las Cruces at the time and and had gotten tested and found out that I was pregnant. I called my now husband to let him know, and the reception was not as I had hoped on the other end of the phone. He was, I would say, less than excited right out the gate. I wasn't excited myself, but it wasn't the worst thing that ever happened to me. But at first he was not having it. So that was very hard. That was very difficult because we were separated, couldn't see him face to face, couldn't have that conversation.
That is tough.
And then he was on the phone, and then he wasn't responding to my calls for like a few days.
Oh,
it's very scary.
How long had you been together up to that point?
Not very long. We had only been together 4 months.
Okay. So you didn't know each other
not know each other as well as we should have. And so it was scary for me. I thought that was it. We were young, but not prepared for anything like that.
Did you feel like you had to contemplate your options, or did you feel like you already knew what you would?
Oh, no. For me personally, whether he was going to participate or wanted to have anything to do with having a baby or be with me or not be with me, that my choice would be to at least carry the baby to term. Whether or not I wanted to keep or give up it for adoption at that point didn't really come into my mind. But I knew termination was not an option.
Well, and when we did the introduction, so we talked about the isolation that you felt. So that kind of explains with him being far away. Mm-hmm. And then what else led you to feeling isolated?
So we had a family trip with my parents and planned to go away to a wedding for my cousin. And it was about a 15-hour car ride with my parents. And I had just found out. So I knew, and no one else in the car knew. So it was really very awkward for me. I mean, the only person that knew was my now husband. I had only told him and my roommates, my college roommates. So I did already feel kind of isolated, and my mom and my dad were my best friends. I had always been super close with them. So not telling them was kind of torture.
Right.
But telling them was not going to be easy, and it was not good timing anyway. And interestingly, my mom on the trip, I was kind of nauseous because we were in the car and it was hot, and I just, I was getting car sick, probably some morning sickness. And she just looked at me and she said, "You're pregnant, aren't you?" We were alone. It was just the two of us, and because I had been complaining a lot about being nauseous. And so she kind of hit it without me having to say anything. She
knew.
Outed me.
We hear that so much, that moms are so intuitive, and they know.
Mm-hmm. She knew it right away. So that was kind of a relief. She wasn't thrilled, but it wasn't like a horrific disappointment with her. She was, of course, worried about my future and what was I going to do. And Because I had made a lot of poor choices in my life leading up to this. So I had a track record of not making very good choices. So it was like another law in the long list of things that I had done that they were not happy with me about. But she, of course, was very supportive and loved me all through it. She suggested that I tell my dad, but clearly not on this trip. And at this time, my then boyfriend was still not answering my phone calls. So it was really hard. It was a very, I'm prone to anxiety anyway. So that really fed my anxiety. But when we got back, about a month later, I told my dad, which did not go very well.
So how far along were you when you told your dad?
I was about 6 weeks along, I think.
Okay, so you were very early on. Okay.
Yeah. Because I found out kind of early. I was pretty early on when I think I was maybe 4 weeks or 5 weeks. So maybe I may have been closer to 10 weeks when I told him. A little over 2 months, I guess, when I told him. And he did not take it very well at all. He was very disappointed in me. And so our relationship for a time had changed. He kind of isolated me from him. Our relationship became very much just very distant for a period of time.
Did you guys live in the same town?
Yeah, pretty much, yes.
So it wasn't like you went back to school, you were in the same town where you probably saw them occasionally.
Yes.
And maybe frequently.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was probably even harder.
It was.
To feel that isolation from him.
And my mom was very encouraging. She just kept reminding me that he'll come around. And he did. I mean, ultimately he did. But that time of my boyfriend and my dad and then my friends kind of saying, well, you know, we have a different life than you do now. So it was definitely a time that was probably, I would say, the darkest time of the whole pregnancy for me.
Yeah, so much isolation and coming from all sides. So how long did it take before your husband now began to speak to you? And
it didn't take as long as, I mean, it felt like an eternity.
Right.
But I think probably about 2 weeks. He had told his mom, and his mom was older. His mom was older than my parents by quite a bit, by 20 years. So she was ready to be a grandmother. She didn't have any grandkids. She didn't have any prospects of having any grandkids. She was in her 60s. She was ready. So it was like a huge blessing to her. She was supportive and excited. His stepfather the same way. He couldn't wait to have grandbabies to play with and hold and love on. And so that was a nice balance, having that. And I think that helped bring him around a little bit to the fact that it wasn't the end of the world, that his world was not changing that much. I think for him, the biggest fear was that his play time was over. You know, he was not able to run around and be in college, like have the college experience anymore. It was time to grow up. And
so did he share what kind of went through his thought processes while he was away?
Kind of, yes. He doesn't like to say too much because he doesn't want to hurt me now, and he certainly doesn't want to hurt our daughter. But he just was not prepared to stop being a young man. He did not want to quit college, which ultimately he had to. One of us needed to, which was, I was closer to finishing than he was. So it was a good decision for us to do that. And he needed to come back here to be with us, so that we could actually build a family and a life. So for him, I think it was I know he has communicated that it was difficult for him to see himself not having fun and hanging out with friends and doing what he wanted when he wanted, having these ultimate responsibilities of I have to be a dad, I have to be a spouse, or whether we decided to get married or not, I have to be something to this other person that we're sharing a child. I have to be responsible. I have to make money to help support this baby. Right. So that he did communicate to us.
Yeah, there's a lot of girls that the father of the baby doesn't respond the way that they envision that that's going to go. And I think they also are shocked and going through their own realization of how that's going to change. I mean, now they have to be the head of the house. They have to be a provider, a protector. All of those innate things come up in them that are shocking and scare them. Yeah. And it does take them a little while to come around.
It does.
Right.
Well, and we talk about, as women, we want what we want, and we want it right now, and how we want. And Sherry always uses the example of the haircut, and that's so my reality. That's why I wind up going from hairdresser to hairdresser. But I think we get okay with it, and then we get this life plan kind of set, and then we want to share it, and we want them to respond, not realizing that we've had several days or weeks to plan this little vision in our head. And then we want them to jump on board instantly when we've had all this time. We didn't start off with this excitement over this vision. We started off with the shock factor, but that's worn off now. And so we're not in touch with that anymore. And so when they get that shock factor, we tend to take it personally. Like, I know I still do that with my husband. I come home and I have this idea, but I've been mulling it over, for the past several days or weeks. And then he's like, what? And then later he's on board and gets to where I am. But by then I've kind of ruined it because I'm upset that he wasn't on board right away.
Right.
Yeah. So what's been the biggest challenge, do you think, for you as a couple? Or do you feel like you had one because of coming together so young and your life plans changing?
Well, I think that was probably the biggest challenge, was just finding a way to come together. Were we going to get married? We both knew. And luckily, I'm very fortunate that he also knew that there was going to be a baby. Like, there wasn't an option there. I wasn't pressured to not have the baby. We were both like-minded. We were both raised that way. So I think the biggest challenge was coming together, like figuring it out. Are we going to get married? Are we just going to just share this child? Who's going to finish college? Who's going to go to work? Are we both going to quit college and go to work? Or are we both going to try to finish college and try to work a lot while we're in college? There were a lot of questions that I think we struggled through quite a bit. I think initially we were trying to let him finish and stay over there, and that wasn't working out. So that was the big challenge. I think just the coming together, figuring out how to make that work. And just being young and thrown into playing house.
Yeah.
Two young people resisting growing up, playing house is difficult.
Yeah. And did you have any mentors that kind of impacted that?
No.
Because you really didn't. I mean, you think about the resources we have now, the parent education, all of the fatherhood classes. I mean, everything that people, if they want help, if they want to be better parents, if they want to have a better relationship, can get plugged into. But at that time, there really wasn't.
We had Lamaze. And I mean, it was still called Lamaze then.
And for those of you young, that is childbirth preparation education now.
Right.
So we had that, but then again, that was just about
breathing, get through,
having the baby, not the aftermath.
Which could be a little bit scary just going through that.
Absolutely. Yeah. But it didn't have anything to do with the aftermath.
Yeah.
Like, this
like
is
you
how
take this baby home.
And then what? What do you do with it when you have it home? But I think that God gave us so much grace during that we did not have a clue what we were doing. But I have my parents. My mom was wonderful. By about this 5th or 6th month, my dad had come around. It just was about 3 months of really feeling disconnected from him. But when the reality set in, he's having a grandbaby. I mean, my parents were in their 40s, so they were not ready. Not like my mother-in-law. She was in her 60s. They were in their 40s. They were not ready to be grandparents. But my mom was made to be a grandmother. That was really what she was meant to do. And then having my dad really come around. And when my daughter was born, it was just the greatest thing, because everybody had kind of gone through the rough parts of coming to terms with there's going to be a baby, and that did not make our marriage easy. We got married before we had the baby, and it did not make our marriage easy. It did not, just having the baby did not fix that. Did not make
Right.
easy.
Added extra pressure.
There was a lot of extra pressure because then the real work began. Now you have to figure out how to take care of this baby and be married.
Yeah.
And how to make decisions that are good for the marriage and for, the child and for your finances. And so, the challenges didn't stop. It actually got harder, I think, for a long time, just in that first year of being married and having a baby. Then finding out when the baby was 9 months old that I was pregnant again. Yep. That made it even harder.
Yeah. Sleep deprivation and compounded pressure and
more. Now what? How do we, now we have two. How are we going to afford two? So, but again, I think the fact that we were willing to stick with it and work through those things and communicate with each other what we were feeling and how, I think that made a huge difference for us. We really did surround ourselves with family, his parents and my parents. My brother was a big part of my life then, and he was super supportive. So we did have a lot of support in that area. But we still had to do it on our own. We still had to figure out how to pay the bills and how to parent and how to be husband and wife. And without someone, we didn't live with anyone. We didn't have anyone living with us. We just had to figure it out.
So if you had a young couple who was sitting across from you or listening to this, what would you tell them as far as the advice that you've learned on, okay, what helped you guys to have that longevity?
I think it was to be willing to understand that it is not like it is on TV. It's not in the movies. This is not, the Hallmark Channel in any way, shape, or form. It's work. It takes effort. You can't just walk away when it doesn't feel good, when it feels difficult or complicated, or you're arguing. Clearly, there are times when there's physical violence that that is not a position to stay. Not to try to make something work when there's something that's dangerous. But just your average everyday arguments that you're going to have, that we still 17 years later have. I mean, we're not immune from still walking through the fire. We still have trials as a married couple. But I think that if someone had been sitting with us at that time and saying, this is what you need to be prepared for, it's just that it's work. But the benefits of that are relationship and someone is supporting you through all the bad things and the good things that happen in life. Having that partner to walk through parenting with you. Because parenting is such a beautiful gift, but it's in and of itself very difficult and challenging. It's not just the being married part, it's the being a parent part. And it's not just the parenting a baby or a toddler or, an elementary school age child. It's all the way. I mean, our oldest will be going to college soon, and we still have a different parenting role than we did 20 years, 17 years ago with her. But having that person that's on your side, because that is also their child. So you have this partner for life in making these decisions and not giving up on that part of the relationship when it got difficult makes it that much better now. We just are best friends where we cherish that. It's not perfect, but we still enjoy each other's company. We would rather be with each other than anybody else. We would rather do things as a family. Our kids are like the biggest part of our life. They are everything. We don't know what we're going to do, actually. We're not sure. And I think that's the challenge, too. And I would say to a young couple, try as hard as you can to continue to maintain an identity outside of being parents.
Yeah.
Because we didn't get that advice. So we have kids closer to going to college, and we're wondering,
it's going to be like who is this person next to me?
What are we going to do? Because we've only been parents. We have never been a married couple. We've always been married with kids.
So it'll be a real honeymoon 20 years later.
And we're trying to figure out what to do with ourselves. Because all we do is stuff with the kids and for the kids. And
And one thing I heard you say that I think is huge is that you guys have always communicated. There's so many relationships that you get so wrapped up in taking care of the kids because that's real, and you have to, but you still have to communicate with that other person. And, I think that's what has kept you guys together.
Absolutely. I think that we haven't always communicated well. We haven't always communicated healthily, in a healthy way. And that is to be expected. I don't think anybody, again, unless you're
unless you keep practicing.
Yeah.
Right.
But I know as we get older and as we've done this longer and more and had, we communicate way better than we ever did in the early times. And I think that's when it's important to remind yourself that this will pass, this difficulty will pass, but you have to work at it to get past it.
It's like everything else. You got to keep showing up and sitting down.
Doing the work. Yeah. And then you'll reap all those rewards from the hard work.
Yeah. Well, and this sounds ridiculous, but I was a horrible communicator when my husband and I got married, and he refused to. He refused to argue at that time with me the way that I thought that healthy communication took place. And so literally we sat down and wrote down ground rules for our fights, and I think today, would our marriage still be intact if he hadn't had that patience to walk me through, this is what healthy communication looks like. When we have an argument, here's what we're doing. This is the place we go. This is the place we sit. There is no slamming doors. There is no, healthy functioning communication. And if you need to walk away, then you tell me before you walk away. And, it changed our whole world. It changed my whole world.
And neither one, my husband and I, had modeled, her parents had not modeled that. My parents fought behind closed doors. Yeah, never exposed us to how an argument starts, how it finishes. Didn't know. Behind their bedroom door. Never saw or heard a thing. His parents, his mom and dad, and not his stepdad, but his mom and dad, horrible. Just the fighting, that it was not good, and there was violence that was involved. So for him, all he saw was yelling, screaming, throwing, hitting. That was, so neither one of us knew, what does a healthy argument look like? What does resolving an argument look like? So we've made a lot of mistakes in especially early on, we try now much harder to model for the kids. This is what a healthy disagreement looks like between husband and wife. This is what it looks like when we fix it, when we come to a resolution of the problem. We try not to get to that point anymore where the resolution is a blow up, that
right.
Because that happens when you're young, particularly, and under a lot of stress with finances and young children. But as you get older and you get wiser and you've learned, it's easier to start solving the problem before it becomes a big issue. I mean, you're always evolving and learning.
It's true.
It is never perfect.
Mary, thank you again for being here today. We appreciate you being so vulnerable. I've known you for many years, and I would have never assumed that this was your past. And so, again, I think it just reminds us the purpose of these podcasts is everybody has a story to tell, and being able to share that and help others is an amazing gift. So thank you so much for being here today. If you are listening and you're facing an unplanned pregnancy, we'd love to help you. You can visit us at pregnancylosscruces.com. If you are not in the area, you can go to Option Line and find a pregnancy help center near you, or you can call 1-800-712-4357. Again, thanks for joining us today. Please leave a review or a comment. We'd love to hear your feedback. You can subscribe on YouTube to follow us, like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, visit our website, or download and subscribe to our podcast. And thanks for being here today. And remember, stars can't shine without darkness.